Joining me today is Coach Dan Rogers. Coach Rogers is entering his first year leading the program at Ellis High School in Ellis, Kansas. He brings over 10 years of coaching experience with a strong background in eight-man football and strength and conditioning development. Basically, he's a strength coach guru. He's been in the weight room for years now and even runs his own performance business, Olympus Performance, which we'll talk about more later in the conversation. But he holds a master's degree in sports admin, is certified in strength and conditioning certification, and he's been widely respected for his work in developing athletes both on the field and in the weight room. And that's what he's going to talk about tonight. He's going to talk about the weight room and what he does in the weight room and how it applies to the football field and vice versa. So, Coach, thanks for joining me tonight.
All right. Coach, I appreciate you having me on. For those of you that don't know, I'm Dan Rogers. I'm high school strength coach certified, and I am the new football coach at Ellis High School in Ellis County, Kansas. And this is their third year going eight man. And so I'm excited to take that program over and get them going. I was at Victoria High School previously for about 10 years. I was coaching and ran the weight room there. And so I'm pretty excited to get going and have a new challenge. And they've been wonderful so far. The parents have been great. Kids are excited and ready to go. Administration's been wonderful, which is huge in these small schools because we're all sharing the same athletes. And I just want to talk about my in-season and off-season concepts, how I kind of blend things, and what's worked for us over the 10 years of trial and error. And I'm sure I'll improve and I'll tweak things as we go along in the next few years. But this is kind of an overview of what has worked for us.
Coach,
What,
what are they? Division one, eight man?
yeah, they are Division Two.
Division two.
Actually, they
Okay.
dropped. They'll be Division One for the next few cycles, but this is the only one they'll be Division Two. They dropped for this one, so we're the smallest level right now, but we're the I think eighth biggest school in Division Two. So I
That'll
think
help.
we'll jump back up. Yeah, we'll jump back up here in the next cycle in 2 years. But so just a quick background on me. I graduated from Golden Plains High School, and they're six man right now, actually, but they were eight man when I went through. And then went to Garden City, played for a couple years of football. I was a wide receiver there. Then went to Fort Hays, went to Victoria, and now I'm at Ellis. And I have a bachelor's in education, health and human performance, master's in sports admin, and a master's in building leadership. I'm a National High School Strength Coaches Association board member for the state of Kansas. As I mentioned earlier, I'm high school strength coach certified as well. I've been coaching for 10 years. I've done football, strength and conditioning. I've done a little bit of junior high basketball as well when needed. So I've just kind of done a little bit of everything, been around a lot of sports as I've gotten older. And then I also have a side business that I run called Olympus Performance that I work with a little bit of personal training, but mostly it's a lot of programming for athletes and supplemental training for current athletes. And I've done school programs as well. And, I love to just do that part, and it's fully customizable for people. And, we try to just help as many people out as we can. And it's a nice little supplemental income doing what I love. So being able to share as much knowledge as I can and bounce ideas off other people and utilize that. So been doing that for a little over a year now, pretty consistently. So our philosophy and our methods, and this is kind of something I've grown as I've gotten older, and something that I really want to live by is leaving something better than you found it. I think it's a good life motto to have, and so I love to kind of live by that. And I want to believe that at Victoria, I left it better than when I found it. We we started a girls' weights program that's grown. We started a middle school program that's grown to about 30 kids in a session. Our girls are at about 30 kids as well between middle and high school. And coincidentally, we started our weight program, and then a couple years after that, consistently, all of a sudden, the girls are in the state tournament. 3 out of the 4 years, and so I think there's a correlation there. Obviously, we had good athletes, but I think there's a correlation there that weight room just accentuated their talents and made them a little bit more injury resilient and things like that that got them over the hump. So one of the best quotes that I've ever heard is Teddy Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts; the credit belongs to the man in the arena. And I know that as coaches, we need to be reminded of that sometimes. And when I started changing things around, it was met with a lot of criticism. And you got to kind of block out that noise when you're wanting to develop a program that works and is, on the cutting edge of technology, and maybe looks a little bit non-traditional, and we'll get into that later. But you got to be able to block out that noise, because the only critics that count are the man in the arena that are in it with you, and all that other stuff is outside noise. And I think we need to remember that sometimes. So my methodology is pretty much Feed the Cats inspired, from Coach Tony Holler, Brad Dixon. Done a lot of stuff. The late Kurt Hester at the college level was a pioneer in a lot of that. Rest in peace. I think he passed away 6 months ago or so from cancer, but he was a pioneer. We've used a lot of his stuff as well. And I think we just want to use the concepts of using our optimal output. Like, we're trying to get the most out of our kids at the optimum level, and not going too far, not doing too less. We try to keep the main thing, which is just performing. When do we need to perform? What do we have to do to be at our highest level? And then rest and recovery for the higher trained athletes. Your upper level high school kids especially, they need to focus a lot more on rest and recovery, because they're probably well trained if you've ran your program for years. And so you need to be able to be rested and healthy. And then we want to stimulate and not burn the steak. I love those two terms. Nobody wants to eat a burnt steak, right? You don't want to go too far. You want to have that optimum level. We want to be able to stimulate the central nervous system and fire it and get it to perform at a higher level without burning it and getting you exhausted when it's time to perform. We do a little bit of triphasic training in our stuff, the eccentric, isometric, concentric stuff. We do that with a lot of warm-ups. We'll do it in a block, maybe off season, for something a little bit different, to kind of reset our ligaments, realign our fibers, things like that after a season. If they're not multi-sport athletes, we'll do a little bit of that. And so, we blend that in with our stuff. I like to do a little wave periodization is the next thing. A lot of old school styles are very linear progressions. You're going to start at 40%, and then you're going to, 50% the next week, 60%, 70%, 75, 80, 85, 90, and your, BFS, the old BFS is, 10, 8, 6, 5 sets, 5, 5, 3, 1, and then just rinse and repeat. And, that works at the lower level athletes. As you get into, the higher varsity level athletes that have been doing it, that kind of counteracts itself, I found. So we try to do a little bit of wave, where we try to do a little bit of power development. We'll do some strength blocks. We kind of try to stay not in a rut, and it keeps the kids motivated as well. It's not the same thing over and over, and it's not just rinse and repeat. So that has shown to help us a little bit. And then we are movement focused. I am a guy that really ruffled a lot of feathers, because I wasn't chasing maxes. I wasn't chasing raw numbers. In high school, especially, you don't really need to chase numbers, unless you are just a specialized powerlifting athlete. And at our level, with 80 kids in the high school total, there's very few and far between of those guys and girls. So we try to be movement focused and speed focused, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But all of our workouts really incorporate a push, a pull, a hinge, a squat, and we do unilateral and bilateral with squats, jumps and sprints at high levels, and then catching and landing and reactions are really the movement focuses we try to put on. And that's worked really well for us when you focus on movement, especially with younger athletes, because you got to remember, in the junior high level, if you're wanting to build them up, they need to get used to movements. And if their movement skills are good, the weight is going to come naturally. But if you try to focus on weight first, they're going to plateau really early. They're going to get frustrated, unless you just have that high level genetic freak. And we all know one, but that's the outlier. That's not the norm. And so we really want to focus movement before anything else. You do that, the weight is going to come, the power is going to come, the strength is going to come, the development's going to come naturally. Any questions on that so far, Coach?
Talk movement. They don't know the movement of the junior high level. Now you got to reach. Everything at the high school level. We're already behind. And not any specific questions yet. I agree with all of this. I'm completely behind. and love
and
this
love this
all of it.
all of it. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like you want to be able to, especially with our level. We don't have hundreds of kids to choose from. It's one of those deals where you want to have your freshmen ready to contribute. There's an old saying out there that one of my assistants and I were just talking about. It was, if you have to start a freshman, then you're in trouble. If you get to start a freshman, then that's a good thing and that's a bonus. And you know sometimes you're in the realm where you have to start a freshman regardless. And so you would like to have them developed and as ready as you can and not have to start from scratch because they've plateaued. Because, around that 14-year age mark for boys, that's when that puberty hits. That's when you start seeing growing pains. That's when you start seeing, tendon issues naturally, just because puberty's hitting. If they've already been burnt out chasing numbers and then they have that on top of it, well, then you're going to start going backwards and you'll have to build it back up. And you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but you want to try to put yourself in the best position to do that. Within that, like things to consider with your programming and your constraints of your things, you want to understand how much time and space you have. So what I like to do is say if you have 3 to 4 days, you want to go 30 to 75 minutes. I know that's a wide range, but if you go 3 days a week, you probably want to go each session about 60 to 75 minutes. If you have 4 days, you want to go about 45 to 60 minutes. That equals about the same. And I think it just keeps you from, like I said, burning that steak. You can get a lot done in 45 minutes if it's efficiently planned. If you have to go 3 days, that's fine. I would actually prefer 3 days consistently year round, but those workouts are going to have to be pushed to about 60 minutes to get the correct volume numbers in. And there's no right or wrong way. It's just what can you do? Some communities and schools, they have a lot of travel ball in the summer. Maybe you can only get 3 quality days in the summer. Maybe you have a lot of kids that live out of town. You have kids that come in from drive 20 to 30 minutes and that's half your team. Well, maybe 3 days is more beneficial for them because they're not having to drive in an extra day of the week over the summer. That's 8 to 10 extra trips they don't have to make into town. So, you just kind of got to work what's best for you. But if you're doing 3 days, try to hit 60 to 75 minutes. If you're able to do 4 days a week, 45 to 60 minutes, is plenty to get the correct work capacity in. And I like to do speed focus. What I found works best is doing at least 2 of those days speed focused. Even if you're doing 3 days a week, try to get 2 of those of max speed days. And the reason for that is because you don't get those really any other time in the correct way. Now, during track season, in season, you could maybe, depending if your track program is good, you could be getting that, and that's something that you work with your track coach. We'll talk later about that. But you want to try to hit speed focus on your workouts at least 2 of those days. But if you're in the summer, like we're coming up on summer workouts, 2 days a week, you got to be sprinting. You got to be full tilt, as as hard as you can, as intense as you can on sprints and jumps because they're not getting anywhere else. So you want to try to do that. I always like the term. It's another feed the cats term. Strength kills, but speed demoralizes. Everybody says, so speed kills. Well, it does, but strength kills. But speed just demoralizes, just obliterates your opponent because there is so many times that you've seen on film, or maybe it's happened to you, or you've had happen, where you have the perfect angle on somebody and they just outrun it. So you've done everything right. You've taken your steps. You've pursued the correct way. That guy's just faster, right? You've done everything right, and you might be the strongest kid in the team, but he's outrunning you. And so it's just embarrassing. It demoralizes you from that aspect, and that's one of those things that I like to think about is strength kills, but speed just demoralizes. It's a mental thing more than it is a physical thing. And then speed is a tide that lifts all boats. So if you're able to sprint and you're able to have a full, intense session, and you're able to increase your speed, increase your top miles per hour, increase your 10-yard split, whatever it may be. Well, and to do that, you have to recruit type 2 muscle fibers. You have to open up pathways in your central nervous system. You have all these pathways coming from your brain to your body. You have safety measures built into your brain that you want to unlock. It's your brain is literally keeping you safe. And they're perceiving you going really fast or jumping really high as a threat. And so to train that and get to that spot, right, to get a little bit faster, you have to be able to unlock that and have your brain tell yourself to it's not scary, it's not safe, it's not unsafe to be able to get to that speed or whatever. And we incorporate a lot of overspeed training, band assisted jumps, to get us higher in the air, um, just to get our brain used to being at that level. And so that's something that if you're able to do that, then you can transfer that to the weight room, and all of a sudden your squat goes up higher, your cleans go up higher, you're able to load more weight on your unilateral exercises, which in turn makes your stability better and your joints a little bit more resilient, which decreases injury. It's just that speed is that tide that lifts all boats, and I think that's a newer way of thinking, but I know a lot of the really good strength coaches out there have already been doing this and utilizing that as a concept. So the other thing you want to consider is students' needs and activities. I mean, we're all smaller schools. A lot of kids are doing a lot of stuff. And so you want to understand the current and upcoming sport seasons. You would love to have the kids with you all the time, and you would hope the kids love the weight room as much as you do, but really that's not the case. And so you need to understand where they're at, what they're doing, and then provide a conditioning stimulus preseason. So we always think of conditioning when we hear the term we're not in shape or we need to be in better conditioning. We're going to do conditioning. You always think of just like steady state running, right? Well, conditioning is literally being ready to play and perform your sport at the highest level. So you need to look at the sports, you look at the activities of that next season and understand how can we condition our athletes to be in that capacity. So for say basketball, that's a lot more steady state. So you want to have a little bit more, aerobic capacity and VO2 buildup, Um, for football, you're highly intense for 6 seconds and then you get a 30-second break. Well, do we need to do cross country workouts? Do we need to go run for 20 minutes to be in shape for football? Not necessarily. I mean, yes, you want that aerobic capacity, but also you're not in condition to do what the demand of the sport is. So that's where the term conditioning comes in. You want to be able to get that preseason so they're ready to go when the season starts. And then the one thing I like to do, which was a big hit, was provide an opposing stimulus during the season. And I use basketball as a great example for this because it's low hanging fruit. So in basketball, think about it. You have basketball athletes in your class in the weight room before school, after school, during school, whatever it is. All of a sudden, you look at it, they're doing a plyometric workout for 1.5 to 2 hours every single day. They're running, they're cutting, they're exploding, they're jumping, they're landing hundreds of times in a practice. And then if you just are doing the same old thing that you've done forever and you have, we're going to do box jumps in the weight room. Well, you're doing plyometrics again. You're already filling that bucket during practice. Go fill another bucket in the weight room, right? I know my basketball athletes, a lot of them loved it once we got into it because we didn't do jumps in the weight room. We didn't do any plyometric stuff. We didn't do jump ropes. We didn't do box jumps. We didn't do, single leg hops. We didn't do a lot of that kind of stuff. I really just what I did was load them up with 85%, roughly 85% to 95% of their weight, and we would do slow and controlled tempos. We would provide an opposing stimulus. We would strengthen those joints as much as we can because they're getting all of that during practice already. They're getting the plyo, the explosion, the type 2 activation there during practice a lot more. We don't need to do that in the weight room. And so you try to find an opposing stimulus, and you just have to look at the demands of the sports that you have to be able to do that. So within that, I like to break my stuff down into 3 different seasons. So what I call the off season is the spring, which would be finishing up right now, and this is geared towards football, but it can be done with any sport. So I'm going to use football as the example. So what I like to do in the spring is hypertrophy and work capacity focus. Really try to build a good base and really try to get, maybe if we have kids that need to gain weight or they want to get bigger, we want to get a little bit more resilient. This is the time you want to do it, is in the spring. Because even if they are in track or if they are finishing up basketball or anything like that, baseball, like you can still do that because most sports require explosion focus. And so you don't really have to do a lot of explosive focus stuff, like I just mentioned, in the spring because there's sports already doing that. You can kind of scale back and work on, just a boatload of volume and work capacity and things like that. You want to be able to build the body for collisions in the off season, right? We want to be resilient. We want to get our joints stabilized. We want to be able to open up our pathways, like I said earlier, to be able to do maybe more weight and push ourselves to a little bit more of a limit here in the spring and build that body up. But 2 to 3 times a week is plenty because if you're doing hypertrophy work, you're doing very, very higher weight. You want to be able to recover properly and not risk injury. So 2 to 3 times per week is plenty. Plus, they have so much other stuff going on in the spring. You want to be able to, get in, get the big volume, get the things you want, and then get out. And you don't have to wear them into the ground because they probably already are, because that's just how spring is. This could be before school, after school, during school. It just depends. If you're one who's lucky enough to have all your kids during the school day, do it during the school day. You're in charge of your schedule in the classroom mostly. You can hopefully be able to work that 2 to 3 days a week in there. If you can't, if you would prefer your team to come in before school, great. 2 days a week is plenty for that. And those can be 30-minute to 45-minute sessions only, just to get the team together, work on that hypertrophy, and get a boatload of volume, and then let them recover. If they're not in a winter or spring sport, if they're just football only, there's a few of them out there. You try to hit 150 total reps per week per muscle group. So this is where your high volume stuff comes in. And say you are doing your upper half, lower half. You've got, we'll just say bench press because it's an easy one to do an example with. So 1 set of 20, you can do 3 sets of 10, 12, 10, 8, things like that. Work in that hypertrophy range at the correct percentages, 60, 70%. That doesn't mean that you do 150 reps of bench press in a session, right? That should be common knowledge. You're working your pecs, your shoulders, your lats, your delts, all that stuff. So maybe you do 30 to 40 reps on bench. Maybe you do another 30 to 40 reps on push-ups. Maybe you do 30 to 40 reps on rows. Maybe you do, some accessory work, tricep, things like that, tricep dips, skull crushers, whatever it is, and you've hit kind of that muscle group already. You've hit 150 total reps like that, right? So you don't want to do the same lift. If you want to, and they're not in a spring sport, you might want to roll in as many rounds as possible or high intensity interval training, just to keep them in a little bit of condition because they're not getting that VO2. They're not getting that, capacity throughout like a sport if other kids are. So you may want to run some of that in with those type of kids. And all you got to do is you can do the same workout with that, just adjust how it's done, right? Do as many rounds as possible in 20, 30 minutes and have them go. They'll get their wind moving. Every minute on the minute's another good one that we use. But just really any high intensity intervals you could do a ladder, start at 1, work up to rep 10 and back down. However you want to do it, get creative, but there might need to be a little bit more cardio focus on those for those type of kids that aren't in a sport. If they are in a winter or spring sport, you want to maybe drop that down to 100 total reps per week per body group. Like I said earlier, no plyos if they're in basketball. You don't need to really do sprints if they're in track and your track program is good. Work with your coach there, but you don't really need to sprint in the off season for kids that are already in track. They're already doing it. Fill another bucket. And this is more of a linear style progression, usually because there's powerlifting meets. There's things like that in the spring. You don't have to be totally linear, but the overarching concept is more of a linear progression because we're in the off season mode. We're not trying to perform for anything right now. We're trying to just prepare. And, if you want to work that strength mode, you're in 1 to 5 reps. Hypertrophy zone is 8 to 12. And then your muscular endurance is like 15 plus reps. It's kind of a good little chart that I use to go off of. There's been some discussion amongst what the hypertrophy range actually is. It's, is it muscle tension? Is it time under tension? Things like that. It all works, but that's just a nice little guideline to go off of. So the big thing for that to be able to do off season is work together and know the schedules of the kids. Like you have to be involved and be safe. Like I said, you don't need to do 100 reps of bench press. You can do other different variations of chest and shoulder row exercises to do that. So make sure you do that. Make sure you're working with the coaches. Hopefully, you have a good relationship to be able to do that.
Here, real quick
Real
question
quick question
for
for
basically for the old school style
school
coach.
style coach.
How do you
How do
convince
you
them to
convince
be open to any of
open
this?
to anything?
You know, that's something that it takes. It takes time, is what I found out, because people want to see success, right? That's at the end of the day, everybody wants to see success. And, you know, I think you want to be able to gain their trust by showing them the results. But the other thing that you want to be able to do as a coach that I've found that works, it may not work for everybody, is really being very open with them, inviting the coaches to be a part of the weight program, kind of showing them what you're doing. You know, you kind of have to be very vulnerable to do that, and you have to be very confident in what you're doing. But you know, I know we've had coaches in the past that maybe didn't agree with what they're doing, or they wanted to do their own stuff. And you know, you go have a conversation with them. You invite them into the weight room when you're doing stuff, and show them exactly what you're using and how you're doing things, and just have those ongoing conversations. And over time, you get a little bit of trust built up. And I think that works. It may not work for everybody, but that's probably the most authentic way to do it. Um, I'm not one that's going to come in and say, I'm a certified strength coach. Listen to me. Like, not a lot of coaches are going to listen to that, right? Because they're all coaches themselves, right? They've all had success at some point in their career, hopefully as well. So that doesn't mean anything. So you can't pull that card. You don't want to be that guy that pulls that card. You just have to, prove results and invite them to be open, and invite them to come see what it's about. And over time, I think you'll be able to do that. The other thing you want to be able to try to have is hopefully administrative support. And that's where, like, at Ellis has been good so far. The administration has been awesome about opening classes up for kids, working kids into what we need to do. I know getting ready to have a meeting with all the coaches about our summer stuff and explain why we're doing things, and being pretty vulnerable there with them, because they're all brand new. They don't know me. So hopefully we'll be able to get on the same page, and I can, explain the why, and understand, we're all here for the same reason, right? We're all here for the kids to be successful. And if they don't see that, then, that is a battle, and hopefully you can get through, but it might take a little bit more time. It's not the best answer I can give, but it's probably the best way to go about it. I would assume it just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah,
that's
no,
great.
I think it's a great answer.
Number one, we want our athletes healthy.
Athletes healthy.
Right.
We want to be fast, like you said, speed the ball. And then lastly, strong athletes. We feel I feel like if we've done the first two, we're staying healthy, we're getting faster, but we're going to work up. Again, I'm not weight room numbers. Again, just the high school level. I don't see that's the most important thing. Success and being on form is number one.
Right. No, I get it. And it is a hard thing to do for some coaches, is to let go. But also, I think over time you show that, like, I can take this off your plate as a coach. Like, you can just worry about game planning and skill acquisition. I'm going to take this off your plate by running the program the right way and integrating it with what you're doing and working with you to be able to get our athletes fresh, healthy, powerful, and do it for the long haul, and hopefully peak at the end of the season when we want to. Like, once you can show coaches that, they're a little bit more open. And it's really, especially at a small school, right? If you're able to take that off their plate, they don't have to worry about doing workouts. If they're a coach that has never done workouts for a practice or off season, that's easier. You can show them the benefits of doing it. Like I just said, when our girls started showing up in Victoria, consistently for a weight program, well, it took about 2 to 3 years, and all of a sudden they're in the final 8, they're in the state tournament, for 3 or 4 years in a row. Like, there's automatic proof right there that what we're doing is helping, and the coach had to do nothing different. That was all just us coming in and making our athletes better athletes. And then what she did in practice accentuated that. They acquired those skills, they were able to perform a lot better. Lo and behold, they had more success. And so once other programs start to see things like that, hopefully they're a little bit more open. If they're not, you got coaches out there like that they've never done any wrong in their life, but sometimes you got to look in the mirror and on both of you and see if we can make things better, or if we're just going to be banging our head against the wall. And unfortunately, it does happen at schools our size.
Yep, it does.
It does. We've all been there.
I'll keep jumping up questions as we go, but
yeah, you're fine.
Keep going. Take it away.
You're fine. All right. So the next part after our off season, what I call the preseason, and it lasts longer than most preseasons, but that's essentially the summer, because this is where we're really going to be honing in on that conditioning part. You're going to be prepping athletes to be in your conditioned, able to do the demands of the sport. We just talked about that a little bit earlier. That's the definition of conditioning, being able to perform the demands of their sport, of the next sport season. So I really look at, like, it's an 8-week section. 8-week preseason is the summer. Try to split into 2 sections, 4 weeks of each. I've done a gross physical prep and GPP week before. I've done test week after the 8 weeks, but the meat and potatoes is the 8 weeks that's split into 2 sections. And the reason I do that is because in June, we really get into, as a team, the strength profile, right? You get back together with your buddies, with the football team, with the guys in your school you're going to be competing with for the school year, right? We have some basketball players only that come in for summer weights. We've had, track only. We've had managers that have came in and done summer weights as well, but they're still part of the group. They're still part of their buddies. And so we want to get them back together. We want to try to build up our base as much as possible that we can. We've already done a little bit of that in the off season, but now we just kind of want to polish that up in June and really hit our strength profile, which would be dropping down to 10 to 20 total reps per exercise. And that could be 5 sets of 4, 6 sets of 3 if you're going heavier, slower, controlled tempos, 8 sets of 2 if you're going real heavy and you just want to get a lot of tension. You could do things like that. 10 to 20 reps per exercise. That's your benches, your squats. Your Olympic lift should be even less, because you are a little bit more intense. You're getting a lot more output with those. But your front squats, your back squats, your bench presses, your inclines, your deadlifts, your RDLs, things like that. 10 to 20, higher weight, 5 sets of 4, 6 sets of 3, however you want to do it. Try to go 80 to 100% of your percentages if you're doing percentage training. If you're doing bar speed training, velocity training, which we'll get into here in a little bit, we're looking at like 0.5 or slower bar speed. We really want to control the weight, get as strong as we can in June. And then we've done tempo training as well. That's where your eccentric, concentric, isometric stuff comes in. So 5-1-1. We'll do this for warm-ups especially, and maybe our first 2 sets before we get into our working sets. We'll go down and hold that and go down for 5 seconds, really slow and under control, make sure our form is good, our technique is good, and then we'll pause it at the bottom for 1, and then we'll explode up for 1. Going back to that strength, hypertrophy, and endurance profile. We're in the strength mode right now, 1 to 5 reps for each set. Once June is done, and the other reason we do that in June is because that's really when, like, summer league basketball is hard and heavy. There's some maybe tournaments. There's a lot of stuff on the weekends going on in June. So we try to really kind of counteract a little bit of that as well, because we still have 6 weeks until football practice starts. And just the way that it is in Kansas, especially, there's a lot of stuff going on in June, and a lot of stuff going on in July, up until that second week in July when you can cut practices out and you can really just focus on the weight room. And that's why in July we work into a speed and velocity profile. And sometimes we'll do speed days after, if there's optional days we can do. I'll tell you why in a second. Most of you hopefully already know. But in July, we're moving that up to like 15 to 25 total reps per exercise. And your speed, you're going to drop that down. So this is where that nonlinear, that wave periodization comes in. Usually you would think, hey, in June, we're going to start at 40%, and by the end of July, we're going to be at 100%. Well, with this, what we do and what I like to do is in June, we're hammering, heavier weight and slower bar speeds. We're trying to build that foundation of strength. And then we use that strength to drop the percentages then down and really use that to our advantage for our explosiveness, our speed and velocity profile. Because if you can build the capacity higher, if you're able to get stronger, in the off season and the first part of summer, then all of a sudden your 60% has improved, but you can still move it at a very good speed, which is increasing your power, which is increasing your velocity, which is increasing, the amount of force you can generate, on a block, on a pull, on a tackle, on a whatever it may be. So 15 to 25 total reps, 50 to 80%, 0.5 to 1.2 of bar speed. So we're trying to move that bar fast if you're a velocity based guy. And so an example of that would be 5 sets of 3 at 75%. And our goal is 0.8 meters per second. If you get 0.8 meters per second on average, then you can add weight and maybe you're moving 80, 85% at 0.8 meters per second. And that's where speed training comes into effect and velocity training, which I absolutely love. I'll talk about that in a second. If you can do that, you're generating a boatload of force. You're generating so much force, which is required for every sport, especially football. And this is where we want to compete as much as possible. Like I said, second week of July is when usually Keisha comes in and cuts everything and says, "Hey, we're just your team camps are done, your practices are done. It's nothing but weight room until end of July, beginning of August, before practice starts." So this is where we want to kind of add in our competition. And the other reason is because we've all been there, right? We've all been there at the middle of July, and it's a grind. Like kids are sick of showing up at 6, 7 in the morning. You're sick of being there. You're kind of just dragging a little bit. So you want to up the competition, do some things to help kids stay engaged and get the most out of the sessions, and not just do a run the clock out situation for summer because you have to, actually getting something out of it those last couple weeks. And so that's what I found has worked to keep us engaged and ready to go. Just trying to compete as much as you can, finding ways to do that in the weight room, outside the weight room. We play PE games in July. One year we had a dunk contest. I sent them to the gym, and for one of our speed velocity days on a Thursday, I said, meet at the gym. We dropped down the goals to like 8.5 foot, and we had a dunk contest. And you talk about the most force you're producing at one time, and you're competing with your buddies on a random Thursday in July. Like you're getting something out of it at that point, and you're having fun doing it, making it a place kids want to be. We'll throw some things up on a leaderboard with some of our technology. We're able to put leaderboards up. We can, just throw on 65 pounds on the trap bar, and we'll do trap bar jumps, and we'll do either like a burnout session if we want to, or we can do test verticals with that. Like there's countless ways you can find to compete. And we train max velocity 2 times per week, non-negotiable at that point in July. I mean, it is a non-negotiable pretty much all summer, but we make sure to not miss anything when it comes to sprinting or doing a lot of jumps or explosive materials. We try to do that 2 times a week at minimum. And the reason we do a lot of what we do is because when you look at your strength and conditioning, it takes 5 to 8 days to lose your maximal speed, to start losing your maximum speed and maximum velocity output. In conjunction, it takes about 25 to 35 days, so roughly on average about a month, to lose your maximum strength. So if you can gain as much strength as possible in that off-season period and the preseason period, that first part of June, then for the whole month of July, if you don't do anything, you're probably not going to lose much of your maximum strength, but you are going to lose strength endurance, which is about 10 to 20 days, and you're for sure going to lose your maximal speed. And this is where coaches have faltered in the past, I think, with not making speed a priority, because by the end of the season, they've lost so much velocity and speed, putting at bigger risk of injury. We're filling a bucket with maximum strength that has already been filled, that there's a point of diminishing returns at that point, that if you're just keeping on chasing maximum strength in numbers, like at some point you're going to start going backwards, because you filled that already. You're not going to lose it for 20 to 30 days. Let's go work on things you are going to lose. So that's why we do speed. That's why we do velocity consistently, because it takes a long time to build it up, but it only takes 5 to 8 days to lose it. The last part you want to work on for this is in season, and this is where we're going to do a little bit of math. So your high school football regular season is roughly 10 weeks long. Your basketball, your winter sports, basketball, wrestling season, they're roughly 12 weeks, right? And then your baseball, your track, your golf, your tennis, whatever, your spring sports, their regular season of competition is about 8 weeks. So put all that together, you're looking at 30 weeks of total in-season competition for most kids. That is 58% of the year in total, not just the school year, of your year in total is 58%, right? Is spent in season. Your summer break, and I'm being generous here, is 9 weeks of training. I do 8 weeks, there's some optional stuff. So 9 weeks, we'll say. That equals only 17% of your total year. So if you're only focused in the summer on improving, you're only doing it for 17% of your year. So in-season training is a non-negotiable, because when you put the in-season and summer break together, 58 plus 17, you're looking at 75% of your total year spent training 3 to 4 days a week. That's where you start to see the massive improvements. It's not the 9 weeks going really hard in the summer and not doing anything because I'm saving myself for games, right? You have to train during the season, because the simple math just shows right there. 58% of the year is spent in season training. You can't take 58% of the year off and do nothing but play games and compete. You have to be able to train if you want to see improvements and build your body up and reach your goals. So this is a nice little visual. This is a nice little, numbers that I like to throw out to everybody, because it is shocking when you look at it, but it's so true when you look at it and think of it. You're like, yeah, that does make sense. And there's a lot of kids out there that, well, I'm just going to work in the summer, and they just show up in the summer. Well, there's a reason they're not improving, right? And there's a reason those kids are probably always hurt in some soft tissue injury here or there, right? You're not going to really prevent an ACL injury or something catastrophic, but you can prevent hamstring strains. You can help prevent sprained ankles, and at least get them back to returning a lot faster from a sprained ankle if they're training consistently and they're doing things they're supposed to be doing. You can help prevent some of that stuff. So that's why you cannot skip your in-season training. So how we do that, we already talked about it. You provide that opposing stimulus during the season, because you're already filling buckets. In practices, you want to do something different. Football is unique because there is only 1 day a week that you're competing, unlike basketball or volleyball or baseball or whatever it may be, where you're doing multiple competitions throughout the week. Football is 1 time a week. I like that. It helps. So what you want to do with that is look at your practice structure first, and then blend your training with it. And this is where Feed the Cats has been awesome with resources. So you look at stats, you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, in high school, the average play is 5.8 seconds. And then your rest between plays is 31 and a half seconds. So your rest with any stoppage, like when you have an official's timeout or a coach's timeout, plus the play clock, plus the rest between your plays, that's 81 seconds. It's almost a minute and a half. Your work to rest ratio in a high school game is 1 to 5.5. So you're working for 1, and then you're resting for 5.5. Right? Your drives, you average about 11 drives per game. This is average. Okay. Now, 8-man is a little bit different because you got almost everybody's playing both ways. So you could double that. Okay, well then 20 drives a game. Still not a lot. But then if you add in somebody, you get 45 to halftime, or you 45 somebody at halftime, you literally might only have 12 drives in that whole game. So, you got to look at these stats and you got to kind of blend, okay, well, what are we doing to maximize that part of it? And you would do the same thing for basketball. You do the same thing for volleyball. You do the same thing for baseball, all the sports. What are their sports statistics? And then how can you blend your training to either oppose that or condition for it? Really, at the end of the day, this is what's staggering. In high school, 14 and a half minutes of actual gameplay is going on in a football game. Once again, 8-man, you probably want to double that because most are playing both ways. So still, 28 minutes of actual gameplay is going on. 79 minutes of rest between those plays. Okay. And so even, when you talk 8-man, you're probably going to cut that down a little bit because you're not playing, you are playing both ways. So you do have a little bit less rest, but it's still pretty close to that. There's over 25 minutes of stoppage in a high school football game between the play clock, in the huddle, timeouts, officials timeouts, first down markings, whatever it may be. There's over 25 minutes of stoppage during a game. So look at yourself in the mirror and say, are you training the right way? Are we training to do that? What a good resource to use is the sprint day, non-sprint day from Performance Feed the Cats. PN Track is their Twitter handle or X handle, whatever it may be. Brad Dixon also has done this, and he's won a boatload of games last few years after their program being in the crapper. So what they do is a 5-day arrangement of high-low central nervous system days. And this is something we're going to adopt at Ellis, and I will let you know how it goes. But the concepts are going to be very similar. We'll obviously tweak it to fit our schedule specifically. But the overarching concept is you have high-low days. So on Mondays, you're sprinting, speed, agility, max strength if you're doing workouts, 2-hour practice, right? This is the Feed the Cat system. Okay? Well, I have a JV game on Mondays. Great. A JV game is a high day, right? Those younger guys are getting a high central nervous system game, a high output, right? Your varsity guys that aren't going to JV games, I'm going to hold those guys back, and we're going to do a full tilt. During our practice on Mondays is going to be a full tilt practice, a full-on sprint, high-velocity workout, right? And then we'll go watch the JV game. We'll support those guys while they're doing their high central nervous system day. Tuesdays for everybody is a non-sprint day. It is a low day. What Feed the Cats likes to do is tempo and conditioning, if you are doing any of that, maybe some upper body circuits, things like that, and then a 1-hour practice, more slow and controlled, right? We're going to not go 1 hour. We'll probably go 2 hours every day because we just have to. But it's going to be the focus of that day is going to be more instruction. It's going to be more learning, install of the game plan, individual drills, things like that, slow and controlled. Wednesday, we're back up to that high CNS day. We're going to go high again. We're going to get exhausted mentally and physically because, it's right in the middle of the week. We want to be able to get as much done. This is going to be a high tempoed practice, going to be, sprinting as much as possible, as many reps as we can get in. I mean, we're going to be going quick with it on Wednesdays. And then Thursday, we're back down, which we usually are anyway, but Thursdays we'll be back down to a 1 hour is what Feed the Cats has. We'll still be about an hour, hour and a half. Maybe do some yoga at the end of practice, maybe just polish up the game plan, run through plays, run through our defensive sets, adjustments, audibles, make sure everybody's on the same page, get in and get out on Thursdays. And then Friday is a high CNS day. It's a game day for the varsity guys. It's sprinting, it's hitting, it's physical, it's in it. So we treat a Friday as a high CNS day. Now, the conundrum you're going to run into is the JV guys on a Friday because they're probably not playing on Friday. So there's multiple ways you could probably do it. If somebody has a better idea out there, please let me know. But right after school, if it's a home game, right after school, our JV guys are going to come in and they're going to do a workout in the weight room. It's going to be a sprinting, jumping, bounding, very intense circuit style quick workout on Fridays. The kids that I know are probably not going to play, right? The freshmen, the lower level kids. If there's a chance they'll probably play, I'll probably let them go and let them play on Fridays. You're going to play some risk reward with that, and that's fine. We'll adjust that as we go. But that's kind of my idea. If it's an away game, luckily for me, I'm going to have most of those kids in class. So during the school day on a Friday, we're lifting, we're going intense on a game day because they're not going to get it probably on Friday night. They're going to stand on the sideline. So if you have kids in your class during the school year, that's a great way to utilize that. That's what I'm hoping for. If not, you may have to do something, and it might just be home games. They may get lucky and not have to do away games. It just may not be logistically possible. I understand that. You might have 30 minutes before you leave for an away game. You could knock that out quickly. send one of your assistants in, take those guys to do your workouts. Maybe you're prepping the varsity guys. There's multiple ways to do things. We'll have to find what works best for us, but we are going to follow this system. And then Saturdays and Sundays off, nothing. Get them away. Get them away from the game. Get them away from you. Have them decompress a little bit, because we know how intense a game can be. We know how intense it can be for coaches and players and everybody involved. Give them a couple days off. Almost have them want to come back. That's a feed the cats thing. Have them excited, almost like a lion caged because they're so excited to get back out there. You almost have to hold them back. That's what you want to do on the weekends. Let them step away from it. Let them breathe. Let them rest. And then come back Monday, hopefully refreshed and ready to go and excited, and not making this a Saturday workout, team issued, and then a Sunday film session. Then we're back at it Monday. You just don't get a break. You get to week 8, 9, 10 with that, man, you're burnout. Kids are tired. They're exhausted. They don't want to be there. You want to make it a place they want to be. So I think we're going to work a lot of that in season with our practice structure, blended with the weight room. Our weight room is going to follow the same way in season, in class. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're probably going to be very low and almost give them a full recovery day in the weight room with that. So the other thing in season we do is we have protocols. If it is a game day and we are lifting, this is for like basketball, this is for volleyball, this is for however we do things, because they're playing on Tuesdays, they're playing on Thursdays, they're playing on Fridays, they're playing on Mondays sometimes. Like they're playing every day of the week. So if you are going to lift, and you do have a game day, well then you're going to skip the last set of every exercise you have, and you're going to cut all of your reps in half. The intensity will never change on a game day, and that's where people have messed up in the past. I think you just kind of, it's a game day, so don't lift or take it easy. Okay, well, think about it. You're expected to perform at your highest level at 7:00 at night. You go through the school day sitting all day, right? You go through the school day and you're in classes 5 of those hours, we'll say, where you're sitting down and you're whatever. You go to PE and you take it easy, you rest. Okay, you don't do anything there. Then you get on a bus. If it's an away game, you're on the bus, or you're sitting on your home bleachers for 4 hours after school's out to go play, and then now you're expected to perform at a high level at 7 p.m. That's madness, right? So we try to get our guys in and our kids in and say, if it's a game day, the intensity is not changing. The intensity will not change. If you're lifting 80% today, you're lifting 80%. If you're lifting 95%, or if you're lifting bar speed at 0.2 meters per second, I want you to lift that bar speed at the speed you're supposed to do. What you can do is decrease your volume. Your soreness happens with volume, with high volume. Okay, so we'll cut the volume out to decrease the chance of soreness, but that intensity is not going to change, because you have to be able to prime your body and do something before you're expected to perform at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, whatever it may be. It's madness to think you can just take the whole day off and then turn a light switch on. You can't do it. You can't. Not in the high school level. It's really hard. If it's a day before the game, we complete all of our sets and you just cut the reps in half. If you have 2+ days before a game, it's a normal day, right? Everything's normal. If you have a game on a Friday and it's a Wednesday, you're training normally, right? If you have a game on Friday and it's a Thursday and we're lifting for some reason, you're going to complete all your sets, but you're going to cut your reps in half. Same intensity. If it's Friday and you're lifting on Friday, skip the last set, take the last set off, and then cut all your reps in half, but still do the same intensity. That's been a great, great addition to our system, because it gets kids knowing that they're going to be working on a game day, but also you almost feel like they feel like you're throwing them a bone by, giving them less than what the other kids are doing. And you're really not, but you're giving them the biggest chance to be successful on that Friday night. Now, I talked a lot about velocity-based training and bar speed. I think if you can get your hands on this as a smaller school, it is the best investment you can do. There's multiple units out there. I do Output Sports. There's OVR is the new one, and it's got a tether to the bar, so it's, I think, actually a little more accurate. There's Virtruve, I believe, is one. There's a lot of overhead sensors you can get. I looked into some of those, but the price range was crazy. But I think OVR is one of the best ones out there now. And then Output Sports has been very reasonable with their software and their units. I think they were $350 a unit. Right now, we had 6 of them. We raised money for it. And it was the best thing to do because it is the most efficient workout. If you don't know what velocity based training is, look up Dan Baker and Cal Dietz. They were kind of the pioneers of it. And then try to incorporate some of it because you will not be disappointed. So, what essentially velocity based training is you drive training and intent and you get the most efficient workout every day. Take a kid who's in basketball, because I pick on basketball because they play 3 days a week sometimes, pretty much every week. Okay, that kid is playing 3 basketball games a week. By weeks 5 or 6, that kid is exhausted, right? And we know how high school kids are. They don't eat breakfast. They don't sleep well. They're up on their phones. It's, something you have to work on with them, but at the end of the day, it's up to them. It's not really the world we live in anymore. You get to that, those kids are exhausted, right? You tell them to show up and you bust 80, we're doing 80% today no matter what. 80% to them probably feels like 95 to 105%. So what we do with velocity training is, instead of having them fail at 80% and then get frustrated or risk injury with doing more weight than they should because their just body is broken down, right? What I will tell them to do is say, hey, you're going to do 80% for your first set. That's your starting point. So say we're doing squat. We're going to load up the velocity sensor on the bar. I'm going to say, hey, we're moving at 0.5 meters per second today. That's our goal. Start at 80%. They put 80% on the bar. They do their first set. They don't get 8.8 meters per second. They don't hit the goal they're supposed to get because they're exhausted, right? They just haven't moved the bar very fast. Okay. So it gives them a little bit of autonomy, and you have to teach this. You have to work with them. It takes a little bit of time. But then they look at it and they go, oh man, I didn't get the speed I was supposed to do. I said, well, yeah, you played 3 games a week for 4 weeks in a row. You didn't eat breakfast this morning because you came back from your game last night at midnight, and you slept in, so you didn't eat breakfast. Yeah, of course your body's not ready to do 80%. So it tells you that you didn't hit your bar speed. So what they do is they drop weight. They take 5 to 10 pounds off the next set. Say they did 275 the first set. We'll take 10 pounds off. We'll do 265. We'll see if we can hit it. Next set, boom. They don't get it, but they're close. They're at 265. Say they average 0.7 meters per second. Oh, you're close. You're close. Take 5 more pounds off. So they'd go to 255. All of a sudden, they're able to hit 0.8 meters per second. They're able to move that bar to pretty good speed, and you didn't waste your workout that day. You've gotten the most out of that athlete that you can get out of them for that day. That's why I love velocity-based training. Okay, and that's just the most basic example I can give. It does so much more to it. If you can get your hands on it, please get your hands on some. If you have questions on how to implement it, let me know. I've gotten a lot of mistakes. I've done a lot of trial and error, to integrate velocity-based training. It is one of the best things you can do for a small school because we're all sharing the same athletes. They're all exhausted. Okay. And then on the flip side, this is the funniest stuff that happens. Kid comes in because he's, had basketball for 3 days, or a girl comes in and says, I had a volleyball tournament on Saturday. I'm exhausted. It's Monday. Okay. Well, let's start at 70%, right? Oh, it's too heavy. I can't do that. Well, let's start at 70%. Your goal is 0.5 meters per second today. So we're a little bit lower. We're on more of a strength profile. So we're starting at 70%. I can't do that. Try it. Just trust me. Try it. So they put 70% on. All of a sudden, they get 0.75 meters per second. It's above the goal they're supposed to get. And they look at you and you're like, okay, add weight. So they add 5 pounds, we'll say. So they add 5 pounds to their weight. All of a sudden, 0.8 meters per second. Holy crap. I'm having a good day. I'm feeling good. Okay. Start adding. So they keep adding weight. And what happens is, it's really funny because high school kids, I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. I can't do it. Those are usually their best training days because their muscles are woken up. Sometimes that's just how it happens, right? So you don't waste a workout. You don't say, hey, you're right. You did play a lot of minutes this weekend on the volleyball court. Let's take it easy today. Well, you don't know. You don't know how her body's going to respond. Maybe she slept great on Sunday. Maybe she did eat a full dinner. Maybe she, is just had a full breakfast and is feeling good. Who knows? Right? So the funniest part of that is when that happens to kids, they think they're tired and they're really not as exhausted as they think they are. And they're able to do the workout and do more weight than they think they could, or you would you would put a cap on them if you just did percentage-based training, right? If you just said, we're doing 4 sets of 5 at 75%, and that's all they did, well, you might be missing out on opportunities to improve because they hit 75% with their bar speed. Oh, let's put more weight on. Okay, let's keep putting weight on. The best things, the funniest things that happen are when kids come up to you and go, I just did my max and I repped it out for 5 reps. And I go, damn right you did. Like that's awesome. That's great because they just kept putting weight on because they kept hitting their goal. So velocity training, they usually give you a feedback. So it's usually a green or a red, you know, blip on the screen. It's connected to an iPad or your phone. And it gives you instant feedback. Like I hit my rep on that one. I hit my speed on that one. I didn't hit my speed on that one. And so it gives the kids instant feedback, which drives buy-in and competition. And then yeah, they come at you and they're like, I just did my max, or I did more than my max for 3 reps and I got my speed. I'm like, great, you got a new max. So we change our maxes, on our sheets. So that's usually what happens. We don't do max out days because who am I to judge you on 1 week out of the year when you've busted your butt for 75% of the calendar year? You busted your butt and then you had a bad week when we maxed out. I can't judge you on that. I'm not going to do it. I refuse to do it as a coach. I'm not going to judge you on 1 bad week, right? Or 1 bad day. So our maxes are kind of built in within our training cycles where we go heavier, we go slower bar speeds, and that's when kids usually hit a lot of maxes. The other thing you want to do, and this is the last thing I'll talk about, is our setting and atmosphere. Like I said, make it a place kids want to be. Try to hit as many, exercises you can do that are hitting the movement skills, but then don't strain too far from them so they get very good at it and it becomes very efficient. Your 45-minute workouts then all of a sudden take 38 minutes, and because they're used to it and it's efficient. The best thing I can tell young coaches out there, and this goes for any sport, and this is really something that I think we need to get away from in the weight room, of being the always intense macho guy. Like that's great and that's needed. I'm an intense guy. I'm a loud guy. But there's times where I just take a step back and, sometimes I just want to engage with them in things other than coaching. Right? Hey, how'd the K18 baseball team do last night? Just a quick blip as they're going. Continually walk around the room. Be positive with them. Treat them as people and talk to them. Don't talk at them. Don't always be barking orders at them. Talk to them as people. Go up to a group and say, hey, you guys have been doing really good today. What do you say we skip the ab finisher today, or whatever it is? And they get all jacked up and excited. Make them a part of it, right? Make it a place they want to be. Like I said earlier, kids don't love the weight room as much as you love the weight room, right? As much as we want to fight it, it's probably not going to happen. Kids are there because they feel like they have to be. So make it a place that they don't feel like they have to be, the place that they want to go be at. Right. And that requires, once again, some vulnerability as a coach. Maybe your whole upbringing has been just a gruff, bald guy that's yelling at you. Right. And just in your up your rear end the entire time. Right. And that's how you grew up. Kids don't respond like that anymore. People don't respond to that as well. So make it a place they want to be. There's a time and a place to be intense. There's a time and a place to get in on them. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah, of course, you get on them, you coach them up. But if they're running well, don't find things to nitpick, man. Just let them go. Let them go and give them control a little bit. You can always rein it in as needed. The other thing I like to say is make it fun. Just make it as fun as you can for them. They only get 6 years of their life to be with their team, with their buddies in the weight room, throwing heavy weight around, sweating. It's some of the best memories you'll have. Make it fun. Make it a place they want to be. Let them choose the music once in a while. Like that's one of the easiest things we did that made things better. Was, hey, Jeff, your group killed it last week or yesterday. What music do you guys want? And they'll sit there and go, I want rap. I want hip hop today. And we're like, okay. So you turn on like hip hop, Pandora radio, or whatever it may be, Spotify. Find a playlist, and they love it. They get to choose it. It's theirs. It's ownership. Socialize with them, crack jokes, keep it fresh. Just have a good time because you're not in the competition world at that moment, especially in the summer, right? And you're not in a game setting. So let's make it fun. It's okay to crack jokes. It's okay to smile at kids once in a while. Giving them ownership is another thing I like to do. I talked a little bit. Let them choose the activity once in a while. Let them choose their reps within a range. Give them a choice to wear shoes or not. That's such easy stuff. Like, hey, so we're gonna do 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps. Your choice. And they look at you and go, "Oh God, what do I do? What do I do?" Like, I don't know. What do you want to do? Do you want to do 8 reps? Do you want to do 9 reps? Do you want to do 11 reps? Do you want to do 12? Kids will be fun. They'll have fun with it. A lot of them will be goobers and choose like 11 reps because it's weird, and that's okay. Fine. We're within a range. You're not losing out on anything. Let them be kids. Let them enjoy it. Let them have some ownership. Um, the one thing I tell them is with the shoes, I'm like, hey, if you're squatting or if you are doing an RDL, if you are benching and you don't want to wear shoes and you want to really train without those shoes on, please do. And it got to the point where it was almost a requirement with our kids of, hey, when you're squatting, take your shoes off, unless you have really nasty feet. But if you're able to take your shoes off, train in that in without shoes. It's better for your feet. It's better for your arch. It's better for your posterior chain connectivity and everything. Like, let them train without shoes. Good Lord, who cares, right? As long as they're not putting themselves at risk. We don't do it with Olympic lifts because I don't want weight to be dropped on their foot. Not that a shoe is gonna make that much of a difference, but it's just the principle of the thing. So time and a place, but let them choose to wear shoes once in a while. And then let the older kids coach up and promote the younger kids. That's a huge one. If you can let the older kids kind of coach the younger kids up, it's going to be more receptive than coming from a coach, right? You're always going to, listen to your peers more than you are your coach, especially when you're a little bit younger. You're just a little bit unsure, right? It's your first week or two in the weight room in the high school level. These freshmen are kind of all over the place. Let the older guys coach them up a little bit. You be there. You provide the guiding light for them, but let the older guys kind of take them under their wings and allow them to do that. And you'll see the dividends and the payoffs of that will be phenomenal as the season goes on. And then make sure to tell them the why. I'm a big why guy. I will never do an exercise. I will never do something that isn't conductive to our overarching goal, which is to improve themselves as athletes, improve them as football players, as basketball players, baseball players, whatever it is. We're not just going to sit there after weights is over, say we got done in 42 minutes and we have 8 minutes left until the next group comes in. Well, we have 8 minutes to spare. Well, we're going to do crunches and push-ups. Is that really going to help? Like, I'm not going to just do things to do things. So I'm going to always have a why. If a kid asks why we're doing something, I'm going to tell them that. I'm not going to tell them the oldest saying in the book, for parents especially, of because I told you so. Right? If a kid comes in and says, we just did, why are we doing snatch today? And you sit there and you go, because I want you to do snatch. Well, is that kid going to put out their best effort? Is that kid going to, be more positive as the day goes on for everybody else around them and be an infectious leader? Probably not. So you need to tell them why. Well, we're doing snatch today because we want to work a little bit more bar speed, and snatch is a great way to do that. We need to work our hinge position a lot more, I think. So I wanted to throw snatch in as a different way to get into the hinge position as opposed to an RDL. We're not going heavyweight with it, so don't worry about that. We've worked the technique. I trust you guys to do it. We're going to work it today, and we'll see how it goes. Give that explanation. That kid is going to be like, okay, and going to spread the word, and it's going to be fire them up, and they're going to be willing to work for you. Tell them why. Tell them why you're doing things. Don't just do things to do things. Always have a reason. Make it relevant and explain it in their language. And then coach them on what to do outside of the weight room and why. This is where your sleep and your nutrition is going to come into play. Tell them what to do outside the weight room and coach them up on it. You're not in control of it when they leave, more than likely, but coach them up. Always remind them why you need to have proper sleep. You have to have proper nutrition. And then understand that the program is better than your tradition. And that's going to ruffle some feathers as well, because a lot of schools live on a tradition of excellence or whatever bullshit motto saying they want to say. Great. They have probably had success. I was at a school that had a lot of football success. There's 7 state titles at Victoria High School. I was on staff for 2 of those state titles. But the thing is, those kids from 2014 and 2015, when we went back to back and won state titles, They're not in the weight room right now with us. They're not on the football field with us. They're 28 years old, 29 years old right now with kids and families. They're not coming to play a game. They're not here. Their time has passed, right? They are part of the tradition. They're part of the history of Victoria football, but they're not in it right now. So I always like to hammer the program. Who is in it right now? The program is organic. The program is always changing. The program are the people that are living and breathing and feeding it in this moment. And that is more important than the tradition that you want to preach, because sometimes when you preach tradition, you're relying on the shadows and the ghosts of people in the past. That 1985 state championship football team is not walking through the door playing a football game ever again. So we don't need to rest our laurels on those, right? We want to put our attention and focus onto the program and the team and the students that are in it at that moment. Okay. And then eventually they will become part of the history. They will become part of the tradition, but they're not living it. They're not contributing to it right now like the kids in the program are. So I always like to use the word program over tradition. Come be a part of our program. Come be a part of where we're at right now. I never say come be a part of our tradition, right? Because tradition's in the past. Come be a part of our program. Come be in it right now. Come contribute right now. Even if it's a manager, come be a big part of our program. Be a big part of our success, hopefully, right now. Don't become a part of our tradition, right? You'll do that naturally later on when you leave. So I think that's a nice little tidbit. I think we get hung up on tradition, the ghosts of the past, as opposed to where we're in it right now, which goes back to my Teddy Roosevelt quote: the man in the arena are the only ones that matter. The critics in the arena are the only ones that matter, the ones that are in it with you. So part of that atmosphere is incentives and branding. We give out different awards for if you hit top speed in miles per hour. What we did at Victoria is we put an anvil in the weight room. I got one on Amazon. We painted it up, built a stand for it. The welding kids did. And when a kid got a new max, we'd take a sledgehammer, we'd beat the crap out of that anvil, and it'd be a big ringing noise in the weight room, and everybody would know that somebody got a new max, and it was awesome. And we kind of tied that to, they were the mascot is the Knights, so we tied that to blacksmith, sword, weapon making, ready for battle type of things. At Ellis, their mascot is the Railers, and I am convincing their athletic director right now to get a train horn, and we're going to put a train horn in the weight room. So when somebody gets a new max, they're going to go over, they're going to hit the button, and that train horn is going to go off inside the weight room, and God and everybody's going to know that somebody got a new max or got a new PR in a broad jump or a vertical jump or whatever it may be. They're going to know. We want to brand it. We want to make it incentives for kids. We're going to give kids T-shirts for different things. We're going to do rubber bracelets or sign a wall for top speed if you hit 20, 21 miles an hour. There's different things you can do to kind of put a carrot in front of those kids to get them going and drive that competition. So you want to make sure you do that as much as possible. And, those are just things that I found over the last 10 years to kind of help out. And, I've seen them work. By no means is that the only thing you can do. There's a lot of other people doing a lot of really good things as well, probably better than me, that you'll want to take from maybe as well. But I really think that whole thing together, putting all of that together, having a coordinated plan and having, ideas of what to do and making it an environment that is where kids want to be at is huge. And then you continually having training, you putting yourself in the best position to put the kids in a position to be successful is huge. And you continue to do that, you create buy-in and you create just athletic programs that are so successful. And we all know that athletic programs are the window into the school culture and into the community culture. And so when you have success on the football field, basketball court, baseball field, track, whatever it may be, volleyball court, the community and surrounding communities, everybody knows that, wow, they must have good, hardworking kids. They must support their kids. They must be a tight-knit community, whatever it may be. It's a window. The athletics have been a window to the community since the dawn of time. And it's your job as a strength coach. It's your job as the football coach, if you're running the weight room, or the basketball coach running the weight room, whatever it may be, to be able to be the driving force for the athletes to do that. And as much as you don't want to say it, football is the biggest one that's probably out there. It drives the most revenue. Other sports wouldn't even be able to compete without football. And so, because football just brings in the most money, they bring in the biggest crowds. It's just how it is in most places, especially small towns, 8-man towns. There's not much else to do on a Friday night, one game a week. They're coming and they're going to see the team. It's your job to give them a good product. So that's what I like to put my pride in. If you do want to check out some other stuff, I'm going to do some shameless plugs here. I did start a YouTube channel as well. I'm nothing like Coach E over here. I'm not as good as his. I do more systems and breakdowns and try to make it a little more humorous for different things. I haven't done much with it in a year, but it is called Ultimate 8-Man. If you want to search that on YouTube, please check it out and get some ideas for some systems, for some scheme stuff. Try to add to it a little bit now that I'm back in the game with 8-Man. I took a year off, so I'll try to get more stuff up as we go on. And then the other thing is, like I said earlier, I do have a business that I use called Olympus Performance that I run, that I do program. If you think any of this sounds good, if you want to get a hold of me as a consultant to kind of look at your program and we can make tweaks for a small fee, I'd be glad to do that. I've had schools I've wrote workout programs for their whole summer. We totally customize it to what you have, your space, your time constraints. I come up with a program for you. We look it over, we make tweaks, and then once you as the coach confirm it, I send it over and you have a full summer program. You don't have to worry about anything. You can just pull the workouts up and run through them. I do personal training as well. I do nutrition guidance, all things that I've just done myself and done with our teams that I want to share with everybody and give everybody a chance to be successful. So I would love to, reach out and talk and maybe do some help with your programs if you'd be willing. The teams that we've had do this last summer, they've all had some success and made some state title games and had some personal PRs in state powerlifting and different things like that of kids that I've trained and programs I've worked with. So whatever you kind of need, I can be a resource for. If you want to go as little or as much as you want to do, we'll talk. We'll talk about it. I'm here to help you out, and it's just a little side income for me, a little side business I like to have, just to be able to hone my skills and help as many people out as I possibly can. So with that, I guess if you want to inquire on that, you just let me know. You can find me on Twitter at Lieutenant Dan, LEWTENANT _Dan. You can find me on email. You can email me coachrogersd@gmail.com. Or dan.rogers@olympusperformance.net. Or you can go to my website, olympusperformance.net as well. All my contact info is there if you want to see. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Like, don't be afraid to reach out and chit chat, and we can talk ball. We can talk weight room. We can talk sports. We can talk whatever we want to do. So with that, Coach, I don't know if you got any more questions for me. You've let me ramble for quite a long time here, and I do appreciate that. But
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I got a few questions. And I didn't want to jump in there too often, just because again, all that stuff is great stuff that essentially majority of it I'm in 100% agreement. I can't think of anything particularly off the top of my head that I even disagree with even a little bit. But speaking of making it your own and making it a place kids want to be, I 100% agree. That's got to be a huge thing, especially the kids. So my question to you would be basically advice for any coaches out there that might be struggling or might say, let's say they are the old school style type of coach, or they're an old school but they've transitioned, they're doing some new stuff, but over a course of a year they're seeing loss of enrollment numbers in the classroom. Kids aren't signing up to go to my weights class anymore. So what would you say would be the first thing that you would recommend them trying to do?
I think first thing I would do as a coach, and I have done this before, is reach out to other coaches around and ask what they're doing, um, ask what they might have done in the past that's worked, and kind of see if there's some things you can do. And that can do one of two things. That can either give you obviously better ideas of what to maybe integrate, but it can also maybe validate what you're already doing. Maybe there's another coach that's doing the same things you're doing, that's having great numbers and great success and consistency. So you know that it can work. So that validates what you're doing. So then what I would do then as a coach is I would maybe reach out to, first of all, I mean, find those kids and say, "What's going on, man? Why aren't you in the weights class? You know, what's is it me? Is it the time of the day? Is it, what is it?" Find that. And then the other thing you might have to do, and because I have had to do this because I had numbers drop and I couldn't figure out why, is because our schedule was so out of whack at the school, right? It was like, why is this? Why am I having such a drop in numbers? Well, because they put weights opposite of, you know, a core class like government that all the seniors had to be in, or world history where all the sophomores. Well, what are we doing? Can we spread out? Can we do multiple weight classes? Um, or something, so it might be a scheduling issue as well. So you're going to have to kind of either talk to the kids, figure out why the numbers are dropping, or talk to the school, talk to the counselor, talk to the principal, whoever's setting the schedules up, and saying, "Hey, is there something with the schedule we can do?" That has been one great thing at Ellis. When I enrolled, or when I interviewed, they said, "Do you want to do full time, part time?" I said, "Well, what's the difference?" "Well, part time is just weights only, and full time is PE." And I said, "Can we be in the weight room 3 to 4 days a week in PE classes?" They said, "Yeah, we would prefer it, actually." I said, "Well, that's what we're doing." So I was able to get every seventh grader, eighth grader, and every freshman in. They'll be in the weight room 3 days a week, all year long, because they're in PE classes, right? And I know at Victoria, we changed all of our classes. We coded them to where they were PE2, like minus freshman PE and middle school PE. But all of our supplemental PE classes were all PE2. We didn't have technically a weights class. It was all just PE2. Well, within PE2 though, we were in the weight room like 3 to 4 days a week. We were more of a holistic physical education. If there's something like going on like that, if there's ideas you might need, talk to other people, reach out to me, reach out to other coaches. Maybe it is a scheduling issue. Maybe it's a coding issue for power school that they can't be in a weights class because they're already in a PE class. Well, turn your PE class into a weight class. Good lord, there's ways to get around it. Um, but if it's just a straight up personnel issue, I think you got to go talk to the kids and figure out why they aren't in it. And that's a hard thing to do because you feel like you're harping on them already. But you kind of probably have to reach out and say, what are we doing? Provide some incentives if they do. I know the one thing I told Ellis kids already, I said, I would love to go 3 days a week in the summer, but in order to do that, we have to be, 80 to 85% of our kids need to be in a weights class all year round. So you need to maybe incentivize that by saying, hey, you get into the class year round during school. We're going to only go 3 days a week in the summer because you've given me enough time already. You've committed already. So maybe there's an incentive you can build in to do that. And then at the end of the day, a little bit of self-reflection, figuring out maybe you think it's the greatest thing in the world, and then just having conversations with kids and maybe other coaches saying, well, we don't like when we do this, or we just don't feel like we're getting anything out of this. Or maybe they'll give you a reason, maybe they'll give you an insight and you're like, I didn't think of that. Or wow, I really thought this was good, and apparently this isn't working. So then being able to adjust off of that. So there's multiple ways you can do depending on your situation. But the worst thing you can do is stay stagnant and just give excuses for well, kids just don't want to work these days. Well, they probably do. There's probably other factors going into it. It's your job to kind of figure that out, which 10 years ago that wasn't part of your job, but it is now, and that's the sad truth. But that's where we're at.
How long have you been doing this workout system that you're running now? Like, I know you talked about constant adaptation, your program, not tradition. It's a living thing. How long you been doing specifically kind of your adaptation that you got going right now? How long?
I kind of worked with this. This is like the last 3 years that I did it. Was pretty much this concept with how we structure things off season, in season. Before that, it was a little bit more traditional linear stuff. We had like 12-week blocks, and it was rinse and repeat. Which you're going to see progress no matter what you do if you're consistent. But I wanted to optimize it, and then I got onto during COVID. It was Feed the Cats, and I got on webinars, and I started just investing into that. And I'm like, wow, this just makes sense. Like the light bulb went off. Like this makes sense. This is what I felt like I should be doing, because I always had that pull of something like, man, we're doing good, but we could be doing better. How? And then I finally fed that, and it just light bulb went off. Like that makes sense. That is 100% what we need to be focused on, especially at a smaller school, sharing the same athletes over and over and over, focusing on optimization, recovery, efficient training, things like that. And so I kind of integrated all of this with those Feed the Cats principles the last 3 years that I was doing it. So it would have been 2021, 2022, and 2023 were the last 3 years that I did it consistently. I did some training into 2024, but not a lot. And then I wasn't in the school system in 2025. So yeah, it was really 2021, 22, and 23, which coincidentally, we went to the sub-state championship game 2 of those 3 years, and the other team lost in the sectionals to a really really darn good team that made the state game. So we had success doing this. Our athletes were healthy, and that's when I kind of knew that, okay, what we're doing is working, because in the past we'd have a lot of cramps, we'd have a lot of things like that, soft tissue injuries, nagging things. And those last few years we didn't really have those. We didn't have beginning of the year cramps, because we trained over the summer for the stimulus we were doing. Cramps aren't caused always by dehydration. Cramps are caused by not being conditioned. Cramps are caused when you train at 60% and then you have to go perform at 100%, right? Your body's not used to it. So the safety measure that your body sends to your muscles is to, essentially just cramp up. You're overloaded. You've overheated your engine, whatever it may be, whatever analogy you want to use. We didn't do that. We trained at 100%. We trained at 110%. So our games, when had to be at 100%, we were used to it. So we didn't really have those cramps that were nagging, and then we didn't have those soft tissue injuries, which once again come from, you're overexerting yourself when you're not used to it, right? So we changed up our training system. We focused on velocity. We focused on power. And yeah, we saw the benefits, and not just for the football team, but like I said, the volleyball team saw that as well. A lot of our girls had a lot more power hitting the ball. They were able to react to a ball a lot quicker. They were able to save themselves. They were able to change directions and react a lot quicker, which in turn give them more success. So we were able to see that benefits right away. So that's when I knew that, okay, we might be onto something. That being said, I'm still going to adjust it. I'm sure at some point I'm still going to be able to, have to tweak some things here or there. But yeah, I've done it for about 3 years consistently. The last 3 years I did it, and it's worked really, really well. Now at a new school, we'll see. I might have to do something different, adjust some things here and there. I'm assuming I will, but I don't know what that'll be until I get into it.
Basically the same thing for me. I don't know if it was 2020 or 2021 when I was really digging into. I think it was probably 2020, because Tony Holler, all the videos started to pop up
Oh
after
yeah.
after COVID, because he was doing all these Zoom, whatever you want to call it, and then he was on podcasts and all this stuff. And yeah, I was watching him all the time, and then of course in 2021, at the end of 2021 fall, that's when I started looking in the spring of 22 to actually be the head coach, and I applied for a couple and got offered a couple, ended up going to Stafford, and then I was essentially incorporating all of this Feed the Cats Tony Holler stuff into my weight room and speed training and everything. But yeah, the same thing makes sense. Light bulb went off.
And you had you had success
Yeah,
doing it at a program at a school that, you know, I use the word tradition, but traditionally has not had a lot of success.
yeah, absolutely.
And so you come in and, it was a pretty quick turnaround, and you had athletes, obviously. But the great thing about that system, and when you use those concepts and tweak it to what you have, is if you have athletes already, because we all have seen those teams, we all have played those teams where it's like, man, they are not very good, but holy crap, if I could have that kid on my team. Like every
Mhm.
team has a kid, right? Every team has a dude that you want to be able to get the best out of. you're able to do that when you do these systems. When you kind of incorporate these concepts and these philosophies into your training, you're able to get the most out. And you saw that firsthand. You lived it. You did it. Like you went to a school that not traditionally was known for a lot of football success and had football success, and you put your athletes in the best position to be successful. And I think that's an indictment of coaches being willing to adapt and being willing to try something new and take a little bit of a risk, because the payoffs can be really worth it.
When I went there, yeah, so they've literally only had one playoff win in school history. Still, unfortunately, we didn't win one that year. We lost in the first round by two. And but like you already said, we had 16 players on the whole team that year,
Right.
and we had no soft tissue injuries, not a single injury all season until the district championship game, week 8, and it was a fluke injury. Our starting freshman corner basically got a guy was driven back, blocked into him, and he broke his leg. Fluke injury because he got stepped on and landed on, and
And you can't prevent those
yeah,
those
you
type.
can't prevent that. But that was literally the only injury we had all year. Obviously, it hurt us pretty bad because we had to put a guy that probably wasn't going to be starting on anybody's JV team, and to start as in a playoff game. In our first home playoff game in maybe even school history. But anyways, and we lost by two. But it kind of the other thing you were saying on too, like just making it a place kids want to be. That was something I really I heard it every day in the hallways, every day in the weight room. Kids like they were excited. They couldn't wait for football because it was a huge change too. They were a heavy run team,
Mhm.
and not that we were an air raid or anything. I use air raid concepts. We pass the ball, but we run RPOs and we're a spread, up tempo, just
Yep.
no huddle, just a whole new change from what kids had seen there, and they fully bought in. So kind of like what you're talking about with the weight room, making it fun, having a good time with it, giving them some ownership, and yeah, all of that, was a combination of the few athletes that we did have and their excitement to be a part of it and make it their own, and then buying into all the fun changes, if you will.
Right. And there's coaches out there, and there's people that live by the. I was watching a thing the other day, and it mentioned the Bill Belichick and the Bill Parcells style of like you know practice is going to be so hard and so miserable that the games are going to be like a vacation, type of mindset. And you know I just don't think we're there anymore as a society. Like if you tried to do that consistently, I just don't know if you would have the success, or you would have kids just wouldn't go out like anymore. That's kind of where we're at as a society, and
Mhm.
kids just wouldn't go out. They'd say, "Screw this, I'm not doing it." So you kind of have to find ways to meet them where they're at, and like we talked about, make it a place they want to be. That might mean you're stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit, but I've always believed like that's your job as a coach, is to meet the players where they're at. You talk scheme a little bit there. It's one of those deals. Like speed and power and explosiveness is universal. Like I don't care if you're a wishbone team or a single wing team. If your 10-yard split improves as an offensive lineman, you're going to be better in that scheme. If you can reach top speed a lot faster, you're going to be able to be better in that scheme. That's universal. If you're air raid, if you're spread, if you're a single wing, if you're V or whatever it is. But being able to do what suits your kids the best, and that's where we talk about blending and communicating with coaches. Like I was an assistant coach running the weight room. I wasn't the head coach running the weight room. So we had to, talk to other coaches, I had to talk to my head coach quite a bit and say, hey, what are we going to do with this? This is how we can integrate, our training is going to be beneficial for this. Like I had to explain that a couple times as to, well, we have to be able to move guys off the ball. And I'm like, yes, I get that. You're going to have to move guys off the ball. But you don't think that us doing, hang clean and trying to get a peak power of 2 meters per second, which is moving weight fast, is going to benefit that? You don't think us doing pin squats from a static position and then exploding up at trying to move that bar at 0.8 meters per second is going to not translate to driving people off the ball? It's all force production. It's not whether you weigh 200 pounds. I've seen 250-pound guys that can't get off the freaking ball and get blown up because they can't move. And I've seen 185-pound guys just dig into people's chest as soon as that ball snapped immediately and have just, like cannons in their hands and just pop and move, blast guys off the ball. It doesn't really Would you like to have a 250-pound guy that has cannons in their hands and can get off the ball fast? Absolutely. But it's not like you have to be just big and be able to lift heavy weights. We played in a district game against, I think it was Thunder Ridge years ago. It was 2014 or 15. And they were monsters. They were just massive. Their offensive line, defensive line looked like a NAIA starting, 250, 240 pounds across the board. And we roll in with 205, 185. And I know we had this conversation beforehand many times of, if they get their hands on us, we are in trouble. And my counter to that was, don't let them get their hands on you. And by God, our guys didn't. They were quick, they were strong enough, and they were powerful enough to evade a lot of just them getting their mitts on them and moving. They were able to make plays. And when they did, yeah, we got in trouble, but there was more times than not. They didn't even get their hands on us. And that's why I'm like, speed demoralizes, right? When you're able to, and I'm not saying speed as track runner. I'm saying if your defensive end can get off the ball, if your defensive end and you're running a stunt can shoot the gap before the offensive lineman knows where to put his hands and react to it, that's demoralizing. That's winning, and so it doesn't always mean speed training isn't just running fast in a straight line. You very rarely do that. But when you train for that, the residual effects become so exponential for every other part of the game. And that's why we train that way. So and you've lived it, you've done it, you understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, that's an awesome response. People always think that well, I guess that's the old school mentality too. Like they're bigger, faster, stronger than us. We have no chance. Well, if they can't catch me, whether it's me carrying the ball or me off the ball, then I'll take that.
Right,
Um,
right. That goes back to what I said earlier. You've you got your steps, you got the right read, you're flying down the alley, you've got the best angle in the world. That dude's just faster. And so he's still gonna beat you because he's faster. Like, we've all done it where it's like there's nothing else you can do. You just got beat by a guy faster than you. That's a Jimmy's and Joe's. That's it's not the X's and O's, it's Jimmy's and Joe's, right? We want to train up the Jimmys and Joes to be the best in your X's and O's system, because that's the blend you want to hopefully find no matter what your X's and O's system is.
Not only to the players it demoralizing, but to the coach too. It's like because you literally can't. Hey, good job, buddy. You were perfect. What? Like, there's nothing you could say because you can't make up for that. Yeah,
Right.
100%.
And I know a lot of feed the cats thing that I've used as an example is the speed reserve. We want to get our speed reserve up, and in doing so, yes, maybe your long steady state conditioning isn't where it needs to be or where you think it should be, right? But they always use the example, you start the game out and your top speed in pads is 18 miles an hour. We'll say you can run down the sideline 18 miles an hour. Okay, that well conditioned team, right? That team that has done gassers nonstop and has done tempo runs since the beginning of time, of the summer, like they're in great shape. They could be a great cross country team. Cool. Their top speed is, 14 miles an hour. Okay, cool. So awesome. We're in great shape. We can run 14 miles an hour for 4 quarters. We're going to just grind you and outlast you. Okay. You guys are at 18 miles an hour, but you're going to die off. Yeah, you're right. We started out at 18 miles an hour. We're probably, the way we train, we're probably going to lose some of that. We're going to get tired, right? So in the fourth quarter, we've lost 2 miles an hour, like on our top speed. We're not running as fast as we were. We're running, our top speed's now at 16 miles an hour. But guess what? Your well-conditioned cross-country practice rear ends are still running at 14 miles an hour. Guess what? 16 miles an hour is still faster than 14 miles an hour. So if your speed reserve can get higher, if your top speed can improve to the best it can be, yeah, you're going to get tired and you're going to lose some of that as the game goes on, but it's still probably going to be faster at the end of the day than that well-conditioned, grinded out, old school gasser team that is in the best shape. And that's such low-hanging fruit for all coaches, and it's just the weakest excuse I absolutely hate is when somebody screws up on the field and a coach turns around and says, "We're just not in good enough shape."
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? That's what you're going to fall back on? I just, it's one of my pet peeves when that happens, and I've heard it from opposing coaches I've been with, coaches that have won a lot of games and coaches that have hardly won any games. It's kind of a
Mhm.
universal thing of, well, we just weren't in good enough shape this year. Really? Was that it? I'm not sure. May have been a small part of it, but I don't think that was the big reason.
You got my train of thought going all the way around. I'll have to remember what I had before, but yeah, when uh because you spoke at the clinic not this year but last year right after me, and I
Yes.
think it was right after me. But anyway, or maybe
Yeah, I had to follow you. Thanks for that, by the way. That was impossible to do.
yeah, I don't know about that, uh but no, like you talked about Tony Holler says it all the time, like you already said at the beginning, don't burn the steak, don't let today, a bad day, ruin the next day or whatever the case, whatever else he says within it.
Don't
But
let today ruin tomorrow. Yep.
yeah, but you said also in that presentation about like what does grind mean? We got to grind, and that's what Tony Holler always, at least he used to always say that. I haven't watched one of his videos in a bit, um, but he'd always say like, how do coaches approach a loss? The old school coach, they're like, dang, we got to work that much harder tomorrow. We got to get back after it and grind. It's like,
Mhm.
well, so there you go. That's that exact thought of, well, we just got beat because that guy was faster than us or whatever the case was. We got beat. Well, we're not in shape. We got to get after it harder. We got to go hard. Like,
Gotta go
uh,
harder. We're not doing hard enough. These kids are soft,
yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And yeah, you get into that, and then, like you said, don't let today ruin tomorrow. Well, you let a Friday night dictate your attitude for the next week. And so we're gonna go harder this week because we're just too soft and we're not in shape. And then all of a sudden the kids are just dog tired, burnt out, exhausted, mentally and physically. So you really think they're gonna be at their best the next Friday night? Probably not.
Yeah, absolutely not. Just overall, the self reflection that you're saying there too, where like I recognize we lost 3 games this year. We lost the first game to the state champs. And we lost our starting tight end in the first half of the first game, and he's our most physical player by far, 6'4", 220-pound tight end, outside linebacker slash DN for us. And that was a huge loss. It was tied for, no, it was 14-12. We were losing. They scored to go up 22-12. Then they basically squib it down the middle. And he's on our front line return team. And he just takes a helmet or knee, I don't remember what it was, but essentially he shattered his humerus, took it right to the back of his arm while he was laying on the ground going after this onside squib, and they got it. So not only did they score, took the lead by 2 scores, 10 points, then they get the onside squib, and then we lost one of our most physical best offensive line.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, we ended up losing. It was 56-26, lost by 30. And then they went on to win state. They won the state game by like 40. But then we lost the last game of the year in the second round of the playoffs to the team that they beat in the state championship. So we lost to the state champs and to the state runner-up, kicked us out of the playoffs. But we also lost week 4. So we went 7-3. We lost to week 4. But outside of those 2 teams that played in the state championship, and outside of injury, like those are the 2 teams. When I look at the schedule on paper, it's like that's the only teams that we should have lost to,
Yeah.
and but we lost in week 4, and like that was probably one of the worst offensive play call games I ever had. I didn't get us ready because like in the back of my mind, I was probably overlooking them a little bit too, and long story short, they're winning 8-6. We take the lead 12-8 early in the fourth, and we ended up with 6 turnovers in that game, and
Oh,
still we're winning in the fourth quarter, and we ended up losing, but because a pick six ended up uh, ending it officially, and they won 24 to what was it, 24-12, I think. We were not out of shape. We
right, and
that's
I think there's some delusion that goes into that with coaches of, sometimes you just get beat. And I think the delusion part comes in with a lot of coaches of, like, I'm going to be perfect. I have to be perfect every game. Like, sometimes you as a coach have an off game, right? As well. And so to punish your players for something like that is asinine, because they're probably giving you what they can give you. Um, and so yeah, like you said, it's your job to look back and go, man, we got beat because of this. So now we're gonna correct that. But we're not just gonna punish them essentially for losing. We're going to figure out why we lost and we're going to correct it. That's what practices are for. Like, it's not to beat them down so far that, you know, we lost because, I never adjusted to what they were doing. but it's your fault because you weren't playing hard enough. That's Are you kidding me? Like that's not that can't be, and that's maybe not how it always happens, but that's a lot of the perception out there of well, coach is on our butt, like we never adjusted to what they should do. Why are we running harder? Why are we doing more gassers this week for his mess up? Like it's the perception out there, and then that's creates a whole snowball effect of a broken locker room, broken trust, and things like that you don't want to have. Sometimes you just got to own it. Like I know for a fact I'm going to screw up a lot of times this year. It's all part of the process. You got to take ownership. You got to fix what can be fixed and move on and not dwell on the things too much on the negatives. That's going to be a learning curve because I know I'm not going to be perfect many times this year.
So where is Ellis then compared to you? Like, how far do you got to go then?
I'm 25 minutes door to door, so
Okay, that's
it's
not
really
bad.
not bad. No, I'll go. You literally just hit interstate and it's straight shot to I-70, then down right through town, and there's a school. Like it's not bad at all. Just go right through Hayes, and so the few times I've been there, I've spent quite a few days over there recently, just getting things organized and figured out. And
Mhm.
I'm sitting there and I'm like, I really kind of like this little drive because it's
Yeah,
I can decompress a little bit. I was a block away from the school
yeah,
here, and so
yep,
you never have any school's over, you come here, practice over, you rush here. Somebody forgets something in the locker room, guess who they're calling? The guy that's a block away. You're never
yeah,
separated.
yep.
I'm kind of excited for that. I think that'll be good.
Yeah, I had that exact setup basically my first year at Stafford because there was no housing there. So we
Yeah.
lived in Ellenwood, which is like
Yeah.
5 to 8 miles ish from Great Bend. So that was nice. We'd go to Great Bend all the time.
Mhm.
But I had to drive about 30 minutes straight south every morning, and it was great. Like again, I didn't mind the drive. I'd listen to Tony Hawk probably 90%
Yeah.
of the time just
Right. Like a
and then
California podcast.
yeah, and then on my way home, definitely, unwind, relax a little, and then we lived there for probably maybe like 6 to 8 months. It wasn't even that long, and then somebody within the school was like, "We gotta get Coach E in town," and the, one of the Christian churches there was like, "Hey, we haven't had a pastor here live in our rectory house or whatever for, like, 10 years. It's right across the street, right by the school. You want it?" It's like, "Heck yeah." Twice the size, it was great. I mean, it was plenty for what we had at the time and just the 2 of us, and our little dog. So it was nice. Well, coach, I'm gonna wrap this up, and I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on here to join me tonight. So thank you very much, coach.
Coach, I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks again, coach.
If you have any questions for me, feel free to comment below or reach out to me on Twitter at 8Man Breakdowns. If you enjoyed the content or you took away anything from it, please click subscribe and check out some of my other videos right here. And as always, thank you guys for tuning in.